What's up, fans of fans? This is Hayzoms. Today I have a Ghost of Tsushima review. Quick to note, this is my first review I'm putting on YouTube, so I like to introduce how I rank my games. I like to compare the games of the same genre to the games I play, that way I'm not comparing open world games to story-driven games. Now that you know how my rank system is, let's get into Ghost of Tsushima, one of the best samurai games I played in a while. Let's start off with combat. On the hardest difficulties, this game can be pretty difficult, but you'll die fast if you're not pressing the right buttons. Right now, I would like to talk about the stance system. The stance system is the stances you take and the attacks that you do. Some stances are more effective against certain enemies, but the problem is the different stances are useless against the other types of enemies. Restricting how cool you look swinging your sword and making every fight seem the same. Anything involving combat with your ghost weapons just makes the game 10 times easier. Coming into a fight with a fully stocked equipment can just make everything a lot easier. You also have the Standoff System, which allows you to challenge enemies to a one-on-one fight at the beginning of fights, allowing you to take down multiple enemies in a few moments. You also get something called this Ghost Stance later in the game, which I think they put it in way too late in the game. Because at a certain point, you've already learned pretty much everything you need to take out a group of enemies really fast. This Ghost Stance is basically a kill streak. You kill a certain amount of enemies, and then you use your Ghost Stance, which allows you to insta-kill and brutalize other enemies. The combat is very fun, but it gets very repetitive late. And I think that's the major problem of the combat system that makes it just not interesting. I would also like to talk about the gameplay. By gameplay, I mean different aspects that isn't inherently just combat. So in this game, there are these boss fights, which is a one-on-one fight, each of you wielding a katana, and just one enemy with a massive health pool. It could be just a random straw hat to the final boss of the game. And in these fights, you're only allowed to use one stance, which is the sword stance. You can't do anything flashy. You can't really bring out your kicking stance to just kick them to death, which I think would be really fun. But the duels can range from just basic fighting to an awesome duel where you learn a new technique and you're learning their combat patterns and what moves they are going to use next. The duels in this game are one of the best things about it, hands down. And I think they really start this off well with one of the first duels you'll probably do is one of the best duels in the game. I can't think of anything else without spoiling the game that really compares to this duel. So, the duels, they did this right. Let's talk about the gameplay. So, mostly what you're doing is going around in missions and freeing hostages without them getting killed. You're going to liberate each camp that the Mongols have captured. You have to free the hostages without any of them being killed. And then you have to kill everyone in the camp. That's most of the gameplay of this game. Other than that, there's just, Assassin's Creed style sneaking around, assassinating enemies before they find you and then you fight them. That's all this game is, disappointingly. Which I don't know what they could do better. I'm not a game developer. It just seems like it's too much just like Assassin's Creed or Far Cry. I think the gameplay is more comparable to Far Cry than Assassin's Creed. There's just you going around, liberating camps, doing story missions, which are different. But at one point, at the end game, when you completed all the story missions, what you're going to be doing for the rest of the game is running around and liberating camps. Which, if that's your thing, well then, this game is perfect for you. Another thing to talk about is, of course, how the game looks, the graphics. This game is one of the best looking games I've seen in a while. The fog is great. The winter, actually disappointing. But everything else about this game is beautiful. If you run in the fields, you just get stuck in awe of how the game looks. When you go into the autumn biome, it looks so good. It looks like you're actually in autumn. If you go in the grass biomes, it just looks beautiful wherever you go. Not only that, but the armor, the details of the armor, the details of your hat and each individual straw is great. The blood could do some better, which I'm gonna go into the mud and puddle walking. They look terrible. If you roll around on the ground, your armor will get mud. That mud just looks like they threw some textures that look brown on top of it. It looks nothing like I would think mud is, which is all droopy and stuff. I'm not gonna go much into this, but if you're coming in this game to look all muddy, yeah, then it's not the game for you. But if you wanted to see the creativity and the multiple colors and just one on your screen, then this game just looks so good. Okay, and now the last thing I'm going to talk about is the story. This story, they did pretty good. It's a great story. From start to finish, it kept me on my toes. It kept me wondering and theorizing how it was gonna end. The battle between the main villain and your character and your uncle is one of the most thrilling things about the story. Is what are they gonna do? What are you gonna do? And how is this gonna affect everyone else? This ain't no Light and L fight, to be fair. But it's interesting enough to where I would say this does better than most games. You are trying to outsmart Kodokan, which I'm pretty sure is the guy's name. And Kodokan is trying to figure out how to stop you. Which, it can be really thrilling if you're into a story like that, or if you're just into fight big dude strong kind of story. It's up to you. There are some things I can say really didn't make sense to me in terms of the story, and I'm not going to go into those until later in the video. That's when I'll say spoilers ahead. But there's a couple things about the story that really irked me. But if you're going into this game for just the story, it's worth it for what it is. When I put all these things together, I think this game is a pretty good game. It's not an average game, and it's not a perfect game. It's just a pretty good game. It's better than other games out there right now, since 2020 has not been full of anything so far. That's why I'm going to give this game a very high rating. I'm actually going to round up. I was going to give it a 6.5, but I'm going to slap a 7 on it. This game is worth it. If you can get it on sale, it's great. If you can get it, if you just want to play a cool samurai game and that's your style of game with a great story, I get it right now. It's definitely going to be worth $60 if you're interested in a story-driven samurai game that you'll play most likely only once. This is part of the game where I'm just going to start talking about the game, including spoilers, so if you're worried about spoilers, just leave now. But I wanted to talk in depth about some of the stuff and why I don't think some people would like this game as much as I've seen some people yank it off. For one, this is one of those games where you only play it once and there's nothing new coming into it a second time. Except for the 1 to 2 different choices I can remember the game gives you. And another thing is the end game. This isn't a game you can keep playing infinitely and have infinite things to do and infinite fun. At the end of the game, it will tell you there are all these bases you can go and capture. And once you capture them, there's most likely nothing going to be... I didn't even bother, because I'm not that interested in this game. But once you capture all these bases, you're just gonna be stuck fighting random Mongol patrols and saving random citizens. There is no Mongols take back the fort. There is no online duels, which I think would be great, maybe. They could change the stance system up, I guess, and be like, ooh, the sword stance once, you know, one stance counteracts the other. But this isn't an online game, so I'm not gonna even try to judge it based on having no online. Another thing that triggers me to say, it's such a weird word for me to say. Another thing that really grinds my gears is how the story is. The story is great. You have this intelligent battle between Kodo Khan and your character, and some of your father is in there as well. But the problem is, not only have you been captured once, but your father has also been captured. And Kodo Khan, being this bloodthirsty, ruthless man, doesn't kill either one of you. He wants you to turn on your people, which I don't get. You cause him so much trouble throughout this game. He captures you. He gives you a choice. You reject, and he kills one of your friends. And he doesn't bother killing you. So of course you escape. And then you got Raizo. Raizo is your best friend they introduced at the beginning of the game. With very little development with him, I actually like this character. And I think he was a really good character. His betrayal was very surprising to me. I saw it coming. I wouldn't say surprising. It's just very impactful. And when you finally at the point to where you get to kill him, there is no choice. You have to kill him. I thought this game was going to have more choices. That's why I was surprised when later on you get so many more choices. It's just kind of disappointing that you get the choice for your best friend and you only can kill him. He even begs in a way for you not to kill him. I also want to rant on the combat a little bit, is because you don't understand how repetitive this gets. Some enemies, all the enemies, are the exact same way. To my knowledge, there are only 2 different varieties of sword enemies. So that means with your sword stance you can fight 2 different sword enemies and 2 different brute enemies. There are 2 different sword enemies as well, but spears, I think spears, not sword, sword and shield enemies as well. So it's spears, they stay consistent throughout the whole thing. So your stances, each stance only affects 2 enemies in the entire game. All the other stances are useless against those enemies. So if you try to use a sword against a shield, you're gonna have a bad time. If you try to use the spear stance against a shield, you're gonna have a bad time. The brute stance slightly works decently well against spear people. So some of the stances work better against some of the other types of enemies than the other stances. Of course, there's always using the stance that's the most effective. Next thing I'd like to add is one of the boss fights, the ending boss fight. It's one of the better boss fights. It's different. It's the only different boss fight. Every other boss fight, you're 1v1ing them with a sword, using one technique, which is the sword stance. And you can use all your ghost weapons as well. Which makes this fight so easy if you really wanted to play it. I don't think I died once in the final boss fight. Final stage of the boss fight, because it allowed me to use my ghost weapons. I was just running around, shooting explosive barrels, and throwing my kunais, which is one of the most OP weapons I've ever seen in this game. It's definitely the most OP, especially with a charm you get later on that allows you to throw 5. So you're allowed to do massive damage against 5 enemies just with a single button. So you can take out entire squads with just your kunais if you really wanted to. But my complaint about the boss fights were they were all the same. And if you really wanted to, you could just dodge and attack every time.
More sticky grenades?
There was nothing
Hell yeah.
stopping you from dodging and attacking to kill the bosses.
Give me that sticky grenades.
The last thing I wanted to talk about
I think I'm gonna
is the
fight
square
Barely.
button and the triangle button.
Last boss of the game. I ain't
So
fighting
above
that
each
samurai.
enemy's head, they have a stagger meter. And the square button barely ticks down the stagger meter. But the triangle button, with the
Shit,
some
you got
perks,
really far.
you
You
destroy
can't
people's
hit.
stagger. And
Ah, shit, you
the problem
really
with
can't.
that means there's no reason to use square to attack enemies, especially later in the game. They
Okay,
will
that's
just
not what
block
you
your
do.
attacks. But they block your attacks, they still take stagger damage.
Damn bitch.
So if an enemy is constantly blocking, so using square against them is just going to get you killed. Luckily, enemies can't parry, or just spamming attacks would also be devastating. Although I think that'd be a very cool addition for them to add, a parry enemy. But since triangle is the only way to kill enemies, combat is just spamming triangle until a stagger
What the fuck did I
button is
just do
broken. Dodging and parrying. There's
Oh, bro,
no
it's
reason to hit
failed.
square. And there's no reason to hit any button but R2 if you're using kunais. Because kunais are one of the strongest things.
Not much left.
That's all I really wanted to talk about in the spoiler section, is just
Oh,
the
shit,
gameplay.
Airful. Now I'm fucking
There
screwed.
and the story. I don't really have any problems with graphics in video games. If that's the style, that's the style. If I don't like it, it doesn't mean the game's bad, it just means it ain't my style. But I feel like they could have made combat less repetitive. And they could have made the ending, what you do after the ending, a lot more fun.
This is firecracker.
There's just nothing to do in this game once you beat the story.
Yeah, I got no other
Except
choice.
if you're a trophy hunter and you just want to get all the trophies. Also, in this last battle, the reason I'm showing it is because I could have just used my kunais to kill him, but I really didn't want to. But I also eventually got tired of this long, drawn-out fight and decided to just throw my kunais at him and use all the traps.
kill you.
It'd be way easier than just fighting him and all of his minions, which is something else. Oh, no, I just remembered. Let's talk about the sneak in this game. I don't think I talked about that in my actual review,
Use what
except
I
for
want.
comparing it to Assassin's Creed. And sneaking in some parts of this game is annoying, because you cannot be seen by guards. It's not that you cannot assassinate them, although there is one part where you can't even kill the guards. You literally cannot be seen. You can be seen for a second, kill them, but if they get away or alert more enemies, you lose the mission. That's really annoying in my opinion. I feel like if I failed a mission as a sneaking, I should be able to I should be given a chance to save, you know, a hostage or something, not just an immediate,
Hell
oh,
yeah.
you were seen, mission over. And the sneaking system also is, if you're playing this game early, it's way better than fighting everyone. Fighting everyone early without your perks, it's a lot harder. And just sneaking around and killing everyone before you even start a real fight is also something that's just makes the game easier. I'm not really the type to complain about a game that's too easy, but this game is mostly a story-driven gameplay. It's not supposed to be fun, you know. I mean, it is fun, but it's not supposed to be like an open-world game where you can just have fun on your own. This game has a limited amount of fun in the story, but once the story's up, you just go around, kill Mongol patrols, and have fun picking flowers or some shit.
Oh, shit.
There's
Okay.
not much I'm gonna say about this
That's left,
game.
but I guess you don't
I still
dodge
stick
left.
to my
You gotta dodge
7.
right for something like that. Or
I
back.
still think it should be
I always
lower.
dodge
The only
back.
reason I'm giving it a 7 is because I'm rounding up. I don't want to stick to a 0.5 system. I was gonna give it a 6.5. Because how I rank my games is actually have a note right here. How I rank my games is a 1 is a don't buy this game. A 2, it's a trash game. But you know, some people might like trash. You never know. People like to play trash games. 3 is it's a bad game. The difference between bad and trash, the definition, well, it means nothing. But to me, a bad game is just a game that could be better with a few updates, if the developers would actually, you know, be interested in that. Look at No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky at the beginning,
Grandpa,
bad
this
game.
is where you're dead
But
as
with a few
fuck.
updates, I would say it's above average game. You got 4, which is just a below average. 5's the average, and I usually tell people to wait for a sale on average games because who wants to buy a $60 game and only play it for like
I don't know.
10 hours or 15 hours?
I don't know.
6 is an above average game. I would usually put that as buy it if it's for
You
you.
thought I was gonna fucking kill you?
7 is the
Fuck
same
you.
thing. 7 is a good game, but it's also a buy it if it's for you. Because some people don't like story-driven games like this, so I give it a 7, and you just hate story-driven games, just don't buy it. You know, go play an open-world game. And 8 is a great game. That's the game where I'd recommend it with no sale, because it's worth the money you pay for it. A lot of times I compare the money to the time you're going to be playing it to the time you're going to be enjoying it. That's like the 3 magic ratio I'd say is how much it costs, how fun it is, and how much playtime you're actually going to get out of it.
That was Ghost of Taushima.
So 9 is a perfect game. 10 is the game you need to buy now. That's all I'm going to be saying. I think this is going to be a great review that multiple people would love and not get shitty in the comment section. I'm going to stick to it. It's a 7 for me, dog.